Happy Easter for you. Today I would like to talk to you about the first verse of John, the 20th chapter, the Gospel of John, chapter 20, the first verse. I just want to read it again so that you can know what it is about. The Gospel of John, chapter 20, verse 1 and 2. Early on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. It was still dark. She saw that the stone had been moved away from the entrance. So she ran to Simon Peter and another disciple, the one Jesus loved. She said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb. We don't know where they have put him." Listen again to the first verse of this chapter. Early on the first day of the week. Remember, we are celebrating Easter. And think of us here today, first day of the week. Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. Listen to these words. It was still dark. Some of the other translations say, while it was still dark. It's Easter today. I would like to share an Easter message to you. Earlier this week, I read an article by a well-known South African writer about two paintings of the Last Supper. The one painting is the famous Vincis Last Supper that we all know. And in it, Jesus and his disciples are sitting at a long table with a white cloth draped over it. We know the painting. It's beautiful, it's deep. It's a story that's never run out of story to tell. It's always new, it's never ending, it's beautiful. But there's another picture of the Last Supper. It's by the German artist Bennett, painted in the 70s. And in stark contrast with the Da Vinci painting, this one is modern and empty. You can see the painting behind me in the screen. You can see the Da Vinci motif. A long table, a white cloth, no Jesus, no disciples, no bread, no mugs, no wine, just a stark departure. You get the feeling of alienation, disorientation, loss, and void, a feeling that finds its best expression in the Afrikaans term godsverlatenheid. The word godsverlatenheid conjures up images of a place God has deserted. It's an emptiness that is palpable. You feel it. It is shockingly empty. There's an eeriness that at the same time invites you to come and pushes you in with force to flee the godsverlatenheid, the God desolation. It's a strange feeling. If you look at this painting, it's actually so lonely, so ugly. There's a presence that has left the place. God has left the scene. There's a tiled floor. There are steel doorways, sanitary white walls, and they all appear like more like a science lab than a dining room. Even the table adorned in a Da Vinci's white tablecloth, reeks of industrial design with steel legs, rubber tips. And then, and only then, for the brave at heart who lingers for another painful moment, the void and the desolation, the emptiness, the godsverlatenheid reveals a treasure. Look closely. The place is not empty after all. Despite the cold metal of the dining hall, just stay one more minute. Can you see it? This emptiness is actually filled with a beam of light flooding in from behind. Taking a cue from Da Vinci's original, Wilkins focuses on a light source from the outside. And from the three orifices, a divine light tears through the entire room, pervading it with mystery. Suddenly, you realize that the light is making the difference. It's making all the difference. It's the light that keeps you watching it, looking at it. It's the light that is drawing you closer, nearer, to look deeper. It's the light that makes you keep on looking. Wilkins' painting is intriguing in so many ways. It resonates with the resurrection story in the Gospel of John. The writer is like a skilled painter. Masterfully, he's using words as his brush on a palette of the mind, painting a message. Like the Wilkins painting, you have to linger, you have to wait, you have to drink in every part of this message. Through the cracks of this darkness, the emptiness, you see the glimpses of hope, light dashing through the cracks. Listen again. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, did you hear that? In this hollow darkness, I see the emptiness of Wilkins' painting, the nothingness, a seemingly, in the thought of Nietzsche, a godlessness. Imagine Mary. Imagine the hell she went through the past week. There was a cross. There was a destruction of hope. Imagine her total powerlessness, her desolation, her stunned nothingness. Everything she had hoped for, the promise of a new life, everything Jesus has told them, all of that went on a cruel cross, nailed into an old rugged cross, and then death, nothingness. Her hope dashes in a matter of hours. All she had left was a grave and not knowing tomorrow. So many people are in that position today. In that position of while it was still dark, while it is still dark on this resurrection morning, a morning supposed to be the morning of mornings. And yet so many people all around the world find themselves in this dark alley. in this future that is so unpredictable. Just imagine Mary going to the grave. Imagine her heart. See her downtrodden figure quietly scaling the dark, empty, blood-stained streets of Jerusalem. And as I said on this Easter morning, we can identify with Mary. Millions of people around the world are scaling the dark alleys of a job loss, our fear for tomorrow, being locked down, a stolen future, empty promises. Maybe when you look at your faith seems like this painting of hooligans. It's empty. Like never before, this world has been brought to a standstill, and on April 1st, there were no April Fool's jokes. The reality has become stranger than fiction. Fear has grabbed hold of people all over the globe. We're trying to come to grips with what we've only seen in the movies. The outlook is bleak, even dark. Like in Mary's story, we experienced a time when it was still dark. Like the Willikins painting, we look at the Easter chamber and there's an emptiness. The internet, in a time like this, is flooded with voices, preachers, philosophers, soothsayers, doomsayers, and naysayers. And I listen to them. And there's one thing that I miss. I miss the God sayings. And somehow, I find the God saying in the emptiness of Willikins' painting. Stripped from color, it's gray and bleak as the world in April 2020. Still dark as in the Mary story, and yet, it's not that empty after all. Look at this story. Look at this painting. It's filled with light. Maybe you haven't noticed it. When I looked at it at first, I was stunned by the emptiness. It's not beautiful. I was concentrating on the darkness, the emptiness, the grayness. But look carefully. This painting, this room is flooded from the outside. Sun is beaming, piercing the dark from the other side. Mary, Mary, you will see an empty tomb. You will feel the final blow of hopelessness. But Mary, look, it isn't empty. It's actually full. It's filled with the hope of all hopes. He has overcome death. He has conquered death. He has risen. The light that filled the empty tomb is a light piercing through the open door. And this is the message, the God saying for me, for Easter. Yes, we are overwhelmed by the empty table, the empty grave, the reality that life has changed, that our tomorrows have changed forever. We look at the table, it's nothing. But look up, look further, look behind. Look at the light. And that's hope. That's hope. And that's the hope of tomorrow, even though we don't know what tomorrow will look like. We know He has risen indeed. And that gives me hope. My empty room And so many times we experience empty rooms in our lives. We experience the desolation of this. When trouble comes, when crisis happens. And we look for Jesus and seemingly he's not there. But this is the thing, the grave is empty. But there's a light shining in. And there's a light shining out. That's the light of the resurrection. He's here, and his light is a resurrection light that has overcame the darkness of despair. It has conquered all your despair. And I put my hope in the resurrection. I put my hope in the Jesus of the resurrection. Whatever tomorrow looks like, I know he has risen, and therefore it is a resurrection tomorrow. I would like to close by reading a poem of Anna Onishkuk. And this poem is beautiful. They say there will be no Easter this year. No hats, no hunts, no hymning, no lilies to fill a bright room with the fanfare of Poland, no garden, no angel, no victory. They say that our journey born in sackcloth and ashes will lead us nowhere, at last to nowhere. And so we sit worried at the tomb this year. Will the tomb be found for once still full? That Mary and the others will leave with their spices and come back home with nothing, that this here the women will finally end their work, anoint, and then leave empty? Shh. Be still. Do you not hear her? Clucking close by like an old mother hen, brooding and sighing and stretching her wings. Fear not, he says, for I did it before, in the silence, in the dark, in a closed and locked room, in a world that had known only death. Did I not once prove, once for all, that there is nothing you can do, no decision you can make for good or for ill, that can stop me rising? Amen. I wish you a resurrection tomorrow. Amen.